here on the East Coast of the United States. Temperature down about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So for those of you on Celsius, that's going to be minus something. Probably about -4, I guess, 3 or 4. 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm wearing a hoodie, a little jacket this morning to keep warm. So we've talked about a story on the news program a couple of times. We're going to talk about it again this morning because apparently there's a lot more to the story than has been reported. And I did caution people about this. It's a dangerous practice. And will it mean the death knell for the so-called Facebook marketplace, a place where sellers can rid themselves of old items and raise a little bit of money for their troubles? And people can find bargains. But if the bargain means your life or being robbed or both, not such a bargain. Well, News 24 has come out with a story, an updated one we've talked about previously here. Of course, we talked about Pretoria Rugby Club's former chairperson, Jaco Basson, who was murdered on the 12th of November after he went just north of Pretoria to look at getting a vehicle, apparently, and was shot in the stomach and then died from that. It seemed like a horrific attack. Maybe it's a one-off, but the question here is, are white South Africans being targeted by criminal gangs intentionally, simply because they're white? Are these racist criminals, or are they simply criminals of opportunity who use words to strike fear into their targets? Well, that's something we don't know the answer to. What we do know the answer to, it's pretty clear that it seems, based on information given to News 24 by one of these gentlemen who's been attacked, that the police have no interest in solving these crimes. Now, the question, of course, becomes, is that because they're undermanned, understrength, incapable, incompetent, complicit, or they themselves are racist and are happy to see white South Africans suffer this fate? The latest story is one that didn't just occur. This actually occurred back on the 1st of September, but just now making the news. And hopefully News 24 and other news outlets will begin to cover this story in more depth and talk about the danger posed by things like Facebook Marketplace. Not Marketplace itself, but by the concept of being lured to a location where you can be assaulted, attacked, robbed, or murdered. Tinus Grayling and his friend Hermanus Oosthuizen were lured into a trap by armed men in a Facebook Marketplace robbery in Winterveld in Schwaning. Now, armed men told Tinus Grayling and his friend Hermanus Oosthuizen that they would pay for the apartheid sins of their forebears as their bank accounts were bled dry. So, is that racist? Well, it sounds racist. Could very well be racist. We don't know. But the reality is this, ladies and gentlemen. That situation was either an effort to terrify them, or it is racist. Whatever the case is, should this not be a special crime? Is that not something that's covered by the South African Human Rights Commission, targeting people based on their skin color for crime? Well, the captured Human Rights Commission has nothing to say on this so far, apparently unaware of it or uncaring. Now, those two guys are from Randfontein, and this took place on the 1st of September. As part of their long ordeal and overnight torture, they had guns placed in their mouth, demanding that they reveal the PIN to their bank accounts. Basson, of course, Jaco Basson, who we talked about a moment ago, was killed responding to an ad for a bakkie, and his friend was able to escape. Yet a third attack, this one occurring in September. So we've got one in September, or in October, one in September, one in October, and one in November. In October, Johan Pieterse nearly suffered the same fate when he responded to a Facebook advert for a well-priced Nissan. And he went to view the Nissan at Modisi stand in Winterveld. There seems to be one very clear aspect of this. These attacks are all occurring, it appears, in Winterveld. So where is the alert from the police to warn people? 3 attacks over 3 months, and these are serious attacks, cost 1 life. They've escalated from putting a gun in someone's mouth in September to murdering someone in November. Now, Johan Pieterse, when he arrived at the place where he was supposed to get this well-priced Nissan, he was robbed of 34,000 rand. Grayling and Oosthuizen had been lured to Winterveld as well, on the promise of a purchase of a 2013 Isuzu Club. Now, they did get a PIN location, and they traveled more than 100 kilometers to Randfontein. But when they got to the location, the seller told them he was at his hardware shop, and he and his son would escort them there. Well, then they were told, you whites will pay for what you did to our mothers and grandmothers. Sounds a little racist to me. They lay in a cell for hours on end, kept there overnight. They put a gun in their mouth and demanded login pins for their banking applications. If they didn't give it to them, they said they would be shot dead. These particular criminals are so brazen and operate so openly that they simply drove around in his wife's car and went to different shopping centers and petrol stations and cleaned out their bank accounts from ATMs. Now, one of the guys who was with him told him that he was in prison before and that they committed these crimes because they did not have money. By 2 o'clock the following day, the two men were taken out of the shack and instructed to get out of the township as speedily as possible. But by that point, they had robbed Oosthuizen and Grayling of 90,000 Rand and Oosthuizen of 165,000 Rand from their accounts. So they managed to get to a police station, and this is what they had to say. The police officer who took our statements at the station told us we were lucky to come out of the ordeal alive. And one would believe that very easily, having had a gun placed in their mouth and having been beaten repeatedly. Then the officer said that they have a special unit investigating these crimes and have been struggling to arrest anyone for the past 2 years. Wow, you would think that these two gentlemen who just survived an attack like this for a spat of attacks that apparently have been going on for 2 years and the police not alerting people, that the police would be interested in doing something about it. However, months later, Grayling said the police had failed to arrest their attackers after they positively identified 3 of the attackers at the Moot police station. They positively identified 3 of the people who attacked them. 3 of the people who attacked them. They told the police, that's them. And no action's been taken. Months later. Now, over 3 months since they were attacked. What is going on here? Are the police complicit? Incompetent? Racist? Heartless? Grayling went on to say that there are CCTV cameras all over petrol stations and malls. He said, I spoon-fed the police with all the evidence, but up to today, they have not contacted me once to update me on the case. There you go, folks. Whether it was Petersay, Basson, Oosthuizen, or Grayling, all these gentlemen were lured to what could have been their death. And in the case of Jacob Basson, he was lured to his death, murdered callously for no reason. South Africans, beware. Be careful out there. Facebook Marketplace is obviously the mechanism that thugs or racist thugs are targeting, isolating, and making vulnerable white South Africans. You got to be careful. Pretty scary stuff when you think about it. Pretty scary stuff when you think about it. And if you're a South African, you defend yourself with a firearm, they'll confiscate your firearm, arrest you for murder, and then you have to prove your innocence. At least that's how it seems to go in South Africa. It's a no-win situation for South Africans, whether they're black, white, or brown. You're not allowed to protect yourself or your home, while vigilantes, criminals, and incompetent police run around. And you're simply a victim. What a sad state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen. What a sad state of affairs. The Facebook Marketplace ambush, lying like lions in wait. In this story with Grayling and Oosthuizen, he talked about 17 men were there. He's like, you feel helpless. What can you do against 17 men? Particularly when they've got firearms. Yeah, and knowing that they're probably not particularly well-versed in firearm safety and could care less. Yeah, you can't help but have empathy and heartfelt feelings for all South Africans who have to deal with this garbage on a daily basis. Now, I hate to, just tell stories about bad things in South Africa. It'd be nice to get back to some nice stories, but it's difficult. It's a challenging environment for South Africans. When you have a government that simply lowers educational standards to a level that make people functionally illiterate, and then tells you that that's sufficient passing marks to apply to go to university. When you have a government that now has 300% of the people who lived in poverty under apartheid living in poverty, and of course the vast majority of them are black. When you have a government that rapaciously robs and steals from everyone, controlling utility sector, transportation, aviation, all these different segments of the economy for their own personal profit, when they staff these parastatals with inept patronage hires, when they steal trillions of rand, when they steal emergency equipment and money meant to help people during a pandemic, when they run dairy farms into the ground and cream money off the top of asbestos contracts, and then sign up marketing firms to warn people about the dangers of COVID, only to put the money in their pockets and get special favors, yet remain in Parliament, Dr. Zwaylen Kesey. It's hard and difficult, challenging to find upbeat stories about what's going on in South Africa. But the positive side of all this is the country is full of wonderful people, beautiful vistas, fantastic scenery, a wonderful inheritance of human capital. Of course, that's being corroded by wokeness and racism on a daily basis in South Africa. Hopefully, the country can turn around at some point, and hopefully the world begin to take notice of a hypocritical political party that fails to condemn such a simple act. They didn't even have to take action. Condemn Vladimir Putin's Russia, a country that kidnaps Ukrainians, an act of genocide. I'm not saying they're trying to commit genocide against Ukrainians, just saying that is an act of genocide according to the United Nations. They wholeheartedly support Putin while claiming they're neutral in conflict. They fail to condemn Hamas for its war crimes, its crimes against humanity, and its terror actions, yet then demand that Israel be taken to the International Criminal Court, a body which has zero jurisdiction over the state of Israel. This hypocritical party is inconsistent. They trade arms with Russian companies that are sanctioned by much of the free world. They buy oil from a rogue, out-of-control theocracy in Iran. They sell coal to the communists in China, while telling South Africans they have to go without electricity because of the just energy transition. Their incompetence, their ineptitude, their communism, their racism, their bigotry, their hatred, their anti-Semitism, all rolled up into a convenient package known as the angry, naughty children. That's exactly what's going on in South Africa. And somehow the world is willfully ignorant of the plight of brown, black, and white South Africans. It's not acceptable. Such things should never occur in a civilized world. But let's be honest, folks, civilization went out the window a few years ago as the leftists gained more and more control, buried us deeper, deeper in debt to destroy our financial systems and upset the free market economies to make us slaves to their system. Free speech went out the window with the introduction of social media, then used to target centrists and conservatives and undermine democracy, liberty, and freedom the world over. But if you're in South Africa, the more pressing concern right now is your human safety, your life, your very life. Be careful, folks. If you live in South Africa and you're responding to a Facebook Marketplace ad, you could very well be getting yourself lured to being robbed and or killed. Now, the consistent things in this particular case, I already mentioned this. It's very simple. Very simple. Very simple. There's some some main consistencies here. Winterveld, Schwane, Winterveld. There you go. All three attacks occurred around there, Winterveld, and they all occurred a month apart. And these are the three we know about, courtesy of News 24 doing some investigative journalism. It's about time that someone did investigative journalism in South Africa. Make it happen, folks. Get out there and find out what's going on. I'm talking to the press, or the so-called press. So good on News 24 for carrying this story. Of course, the angle they don't take is, number one, why aren't the police investigating? Why haven't they made an arrest of the three individuals positively identified by the victims? And why are they thanking them for coming forward when they can't solve the problem for 2 years, but now they have the information and they have CCTV coverage apparently as well, and yet they failed to make an arrest? You got to ask yourself that question. So, not rocket science, but when you're dealing with the African National Congress and the bureaucratic state in South Africa, it all feels like rocket science. Anyway, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. I do appreciate it. I hope you're all doing well today, wherever you find yourselves around the world. My advice, avoid Facebook Marketplace, avoid Winterveld, Schwane, and be careful out there. If it looks good, looks too good to be true, odds are, folks, it's too good to be true. It's too good to be true. That's the bottom line with all this. Anything that looks too good to be true usually is too good to be true. Whether you find it on Facebook, you find it on Etsy, you find it on any of these platforms, eBay, just be careful out there. All right, folks, have a lovely day and take care of yourselves. And by the way, the Stormers, they deserve to lose that game yesterday. What a stupid decision, not kicking that penalty with a few minutes left. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, folks, take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time on the program. God bless.